everyone, and welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation sales and marketing success stories. I am Jennifer Carpus Romaine, Executive Director of TMSA, a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in transportation and logistics. And today on the show, I'm excited to have Brian Ceraolo, President and CEO at Peerless Media. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Thanks, Jen.
Happy to have you. So excited to catch up. For those of you who might not know you yet, which I think would be crazy because you've had such a tenure in this industry and at Peerless, but can you tell us about your journey here at Peerless and in the supply chain industry?
Yeah, we started Peerless back in 2010. I was a publisher for another publishing company at the time, and they were selling all the brands in the United States because they were afraid of the Great Recession. They didn't want to be in publishing anymore. So I acquired a couple of them, and we launched Peerless Media. So from there, we introduced new brands and new products over the years. Now we have 10 brands in 7 different markets. We have an in-house content creation agency. We have an in-house research firm. And we have a 2-day live event called the Next Gen Supply Chain Conference that we've been doing for the last 7 years. So we're a full-service B2B media company, lead gen, branding, awareness, ABM, traffic driving, and we still have 4 magazines as well.
That's a lot of content all around for the industry, which is great. And we've always appreciated Peerless. You guys have been a longtime supporter of TMSA. You were one of the people when I came in and took over. You were like, "Oh, hey, let's talk and keep things going." So, what has kind of kept you engaged in the association and in this community over the years?
Yeah, TMSA is a great organization, and I go back a long way. I go back to TMCA, which merged with TSMA, which before that was the ATA Sales and Marketing Council.
Yeah.
So I go back a little ways, but I always found it to be a great organization because the networking is fantastic with this event, with the organization in general, but with the event. I've made some career-long friends in TMSA, 20 plus years that I can still pick up the phone at any time and just talk about business, talk about anything. I think it's terrific. For marketers, marketers always love this event. It's very educational, shows them what's new in their profession. And also I've seen a lot of people who attend TMSA often get their next job with people they meet at TMSA. So good event.
Is true. I mean, that's what happened. That's how I got to TMSA. I got my next job literally with TMSA. But I think it's so true. And I love that you talked about the different names because during 2024, when we were celebrating our 100-year anniversary, that was such like okay, we've been here for 100 years, but we haven't technically been TMSA for 100 years. And there has been so many pieces. And it was a really cool, like I'd been leading the organization for a couple of years, but the history of the organization and the people that are involved, it was really cool to be able to take a look back and see all of those people and connect with people who helped keep it up for as long as it has. And then being at the helm of that and like hopefully taking us into the next 100 years has been a cool process, and appreciated your support through all of that as well.
Yeah, of course.
And then, so you guys at Peerless actually do an annual B2B marketing trend study. And so that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, just because any type of research we can get as marketing people, of course, TMSA serves salespeople too, but today we're talking about that marketing side. What was the goal of that research? Who was it developed for? Like, who are you trying to get that information out to?
Yeah, so we've been doing it now for 3 years, and our goal is to give peer insight for our clients, which are marketers. So like I said, we're in 7 different markets. We have a lot of people that we can reach. And what this does is it gives them insight as to, are their habits, are their spending, are their products that they're using similar to what this audience is. We ask questions like, what did you use last year? How did it work? What did you try last year that worked or didn't work? Are you spending more or less this year on marketing? What are you trying new this year on marketing? We have another section completely dedicated to AI and what they're using AI for. So it's got a lot of great information for marketers.
I think that's so important. And I know when we go into like forming our benchmarking, you have to think about like, what do people care about now? Because it might be different than what they cared about last year or the year before that, or how does this change and how does this evolve? And
Right.
it's really important to kind of sit through about what they're looking for today, because it can change so quickly, even from.
Yeah, and not everything works. And in this particular study, it talks about like what didn't work, which is
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, and I think especially, like, I like that you include that AI piece, because how people are using AI can be effective or not effective, and you can definitely see, like, I was actually looking over something, I'm like, "This was so clearly written by AI
Yeah.
and
Oh,
not
yeah.
even proofed
Yeah.
remotely," and that's not, to me, that's not an effective use of AI. Like, you can't just have it produce content without a human verifying that information or making it better. There's still a human element of that, but you can definitely use it. Like, I use it all the time to create starter content to then get me going into what I'm building.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So what are some of the most important benchmarks or insights that marketing in logistics supply chain should be paying attention to in this year's study?
Yeah, I'd say primarily there's a lot of investment going into thought leadership and educational content, which matches the needs of today's buyers perfectly. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point, but these younger buyers, they rely on that type of information. They need to feel validated in their opinions to move forward with a vendor. So it's critical to them to know that the companies that they're looking at are experts in their particular field. I also noticed that the marketers are using this content and promoting it in digital channels to where they anticipate these buyers are, which is smart because now it's very different. You want to be able to influence these people either when there's intent or even before there's intent, because this is a
Mhm.
very different generation as to how they buy. The other thing that I thought was important, I was kind of going back to what you were saying before. So lead gen again is important this year, no surprise there. But it seems like marketers are under a lot more stress this year to
Mhm.
prove ROI. So when asked the question, how were your lead gen tactics? How did they do last year? So I think it was 72%, so nearly three quarters of our marketers said that it was either the results were either average or below average,
Oof.
which I found to be very funny. So anybody who downloads the study, pay attention to what worked because not everything did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really telling. One, I mean, the market's been tough. And so, and that's, we see that a lot at TMSA too. Like, people are trying things, but that you have to really pay attention to all of the pieces of the puzzle, because the market plays a piece of that too. So what strategies are really successful, but what part of that may be where that ball dropped? Like, sometimes it might be, okay, like, this is a pretty easy thing, but like, if you're sending out an email, are you looking at the subject line versus the click through rate? Like, you
Right,
can't be like, oh, well, that campaign fully didn't work, because if no one's opening the email, you don't really know if the content in the email was successful or not. And
right,
so marketers can understand that, but when you have to prove that ROI to higher up or to a different department, especially if someone's like, oh no, we really need to be pitching this type of product or this type of route or whatever, having that language or having that backup, or understanding that to help marketers explain those different pieces of the puzzle to the
yeah,
other stakeholders is really important.
yep, 100%.
Yeah. And that's when companies that are comparing themselves to these benchmarks and looking at those pieces, what are those biggest gaps you tend to see between the strategy piece and the execution?
You pretty much just said it. I would say
Yay.
consistency. Yeah, yeah, for me,
Good
I
job,
would
Jen.
say I would say consistency. So marketing teams understand the necessity of branding and awareness. Again, especially to this younger generation of buyer and influencing them early. But what happens when budgets get tight or pipeline, sales need more pipeline? What happens? The branding and awareness programs are the first things to get cut. It's been
Mhm.
like that forever. The other thing I would say is measurement. Again, going back to what you just said, most companies need to prove ROI. It's very easy if you did like a lead gen program or even attended a trade show, exhibited at a trade show. You could see, all right, what was my cost per lead? What was my cost per ICP? That's very easy. But I would bet that most marketers are not capturing that early stage influence. So one of the things that I think is critical for marketers to do if they could find out, as companies approach a certain vendor, ask them, not just like, how'd you hear of us, but like, what was the content that influenced you to want to work with us? Where did you see this content? Because you want to be providing the right content in the right places for these buyers.
I think that is so important. And it's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to marketing people is like when you get a customer, ask them when was the first time they heard of you. And I bet you there's a lot of times that the first time that you reached out to them and they received something won't match that answer.
Yeah.
But you can then also then go into your CRM and you can start doing that comparative analysis and be like, okay, we can see that what our customers are saying is the first time they heard about us is actually the fifth time. So it also helps propel that, like how many touch points did you really have with with prospects and stuff. Like I'm possibly a terrible marketer in this way. I hate emailing people 18 times, but like sometimes, you have to email at least 5 times. Then if that's when they're saying it's the first time they've heard of you, and really then at least 9 times, because then they're like that fifth time is really the first time they're paying attention to you. And so really thinking through that. And I do think it's so important because you can also then track to see if your CRM or wherever you're collecting that marketing data is pulling the data that the customers or your prospects are actually seeing. Because what if they then reference something that you don't have in your system? So then where did that fall through? And really paying attention to that. And then the other piece that you said that I completely agree with is like consistency. At TMSA, we see all the time these marketing budgets, the professional development budgets, the sales skill budgets being cut and slashed when the market goes bad. But then where are you in development, business development, team development in 3 years when the market hasn't turned back the way we thought it would? You're missing all of those opportunities. And the reason why marketing people are stressed and feel like they have to do more and prove more ROI is because every dollar they're spending then is being looked at. But you're making your teams then do more with less without developing them, without giving them the resources, and then asking them why they can't produce. And that to me is the biggest gap between that execution and the strategy, because you're giving them all the things they have to do, but not the resourcing to be able to do it. You're kind of setting them up to fail.
You're 100% right. That's the frustration of today's marketers, because they know how to deliver. It's just if you don't have the support and you're still expected to provide ROI, it's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think too, like now that technology kind of has this more all for one feel, or everything's connected, which is great. I think technology should be integrated and connected, but people can see stuff more that they don't know what it actually means. So like if you have somebody operationally or sales that can then look at your open rates for emails, they can be like, well, why didn't we close all these sales even though your open rate is 80%, which would be a great open rate. But you know what I mean? Like it allows people to have a bit of visibility into things that they don't understand. And it can put so much pressure on marketers because they don't understand what those stats mean, or they don't understand what that correlation should be or could be. And then they have to then take time to explain it when they could be taking time to do the work behind it. And so it can create, I think, some friction if you're not careful, because people can see more, but they don't understand it more. And it can be complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I know last year, Peerless also released a buyer's journey study that highlighted a big generational shift, which you kind of alluded to a little bit in B2B to buyers. So what are those biggest differences that you're seeing between the younger buyers and the previous generations? I know you talked a little bit about getting them earlier before that intent stage, or like right at it, but how do we actually do that? And like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so this is critical for marketers. And it's not just this study. There's other studies that were out there that allude to the same thing. There was a study from Factors, I think, earlier this year that was about the same subject. And the study that made me want to do this was done by the Winterberry Group about maybe 3 years ago now. And it focused on the consumerization of B2B, which if you're not familiar with that, you really need to be as a marketer, because things have changed dramatically in the last 15 years. 15 years ago, it was people like me that were buyers. It was Gen Xers and boomers. And the way we buy is very different from today's generation. We bought, we'd reach out to 4 or 5 vendors. We'd talk to a sales rep. We get the spiel. We get the pricing. Maybe we'd haggle a little bit, pick a vendor, and we're done. This is a completely new world. So 2 years ago, Forrester did a study, also a buyer's journey study, and they said that 71% of all buyers were millennials and Gen Z. That was 2 years ago, so that number probably climbed. They buy very differently than the older generation. They are a digital first type generation. So they don't want to talk to a sales rep first. Our study showed that 96% of the buyers, our readers, said they didn't want to talk to a sales rep first. They prefer to do their own research. And that is very important for marketers, because they're forming their own opinion long before you even get in touch with them, long before you connect with them. And if you're not getting into their, what they call mental availability, you might be on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm. And I think it shifts how we approach sales and marketing. And I have one perspective of my own thought, and then would love to hear yours.
Mm-hmm.
So like for a long time in marketing, it was all about the gated content, and that all of the goods need to be behind that paywall of the person's information. And then it was like, okay, well, we can't guard everything. We can't get all of their information. So we have to decide what should be behind the paywall. But as you said, 96% of people don't want to really talk to you. They want to make their own opinions about you. So if you're still putting everything behind that, if you're still saying everything good that we will produce, or all the information that we could provide for you, that you could learn about our company, what we do, our products, why we're better, blah, 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 we'll only give that to you if you're giving us your email or your phone number, you're missing 96% of people. And that's just a huge shift in how marketers are doing things today.
Yeah,
would you agree?
I think a lot of that is timing. So if you can influence this group, and so when they're now top of funnel, let's just say, they probably do exactly what you said. They probably do want to not talk to a sales rep. They probably would love to go to like a demo on a website, and try to get their own information that way. But as they approach mid-funnel, that's when they're willing to give their contact information to download things like a white paper or thought leadership type content. But you got to get to them first. You can't just hit them in mid-funnel, because odds are they're not going to respond.
Right. And then especially too, like if you're in that earlier process and you're like getting information, no, I don't want to be called 18. I'm a millennial. I don't want to be called 18 times because I downloaded a white paper for more information. Like I don't. I'm going to ignore your phone calls. And then it's going to have that reverse effect where I'm like, no, I don't want to work with you because you didn't mind your business. Like you didn't like give me my space to make those choices or to follow up with you when I was ready. And I agree, like as you get down that funnel, then I am more inclined, like, yes, I would, now I don't know how to figure out this information by myself. I need your support to get there.
Right.
How do you think marketers can kind of shift that and know when it's time to put the paywall up or to give the information? How do they shift, and how do they explain that to their higher ups who are probably still in that old way of thought?
Yeah. So the first thing I think that you got to be thinking, and this is important, what is the type of content that these younger buyers need? That's the content you want to produce in your marketing. So number one is peer testimonials. That's critical. I know not every company can get testimonials, but if you can, it's very important for this younger generation to see that people like them are also happy with the investment. That's what makes them feel validated in their decision. The other thing, like I was saying earlier, is thought leadership. That type of information shows that you are an expert in the industry, which is also very important to the younger generation. And you have to be where they are. So our study said 79% form their opinions from information they see on trusted industry websites. So that's critical. You got to be there. Obviously, you'll get emails from that trusted industry website, but you also got to be on social. So I know for us, we have all of our subscribers uploaded into LinkedIn. So you can hit them in social. You can hit them also in on the website. But I don't know how many people are also utilizing things like YouTube. Video is huge for
Mhm.
this younger generation. And Instagram is also, I think, important for a lot of markets. So you got to really have a well-rounded approach to really be effective in reaching this audience and influencing them earlier. Once they have a couple of vendors in mind, it's very hard to change their minds.
I agree. And I really like that the video component, because if you think about like doom scrolling, are people sitting there reading articles or are they looking through videos? And so if you're not publishing content and thinking about those peer reviews, especially if you can get people to actually talk about it, and even if you can't get them like visually, have some type of audio component, and then you can put like information or demo pieces onto, because not everyone wants to be on camera and they just won't,
Right.
which is fine. But there's like cool things with AI you can do to make them AI little figures now and stuff. But like I've done that where someone just did not want to be on camera, but they would talk, and so I would just overlay the audio on whatever we were talking about because
Right.
cool. Or even you can do that with like a pull out quote and have somebody at your company then talking about it. The thought leadership piece, I would agree to. Some of our best sessions at Elevate are the ones that have like a vendor and a practitioner
Yeah.
presenting together, because then the vendor can be like, this is what we did, and then the practitioner is like, yeah, this is how it actually helped us. um, that type of correlation together is really powerful, because then it's not just the vendor like doing a hair toss and
Right.
saying that they're awesome.
Right.
It's like, no, this is
Right.
like proven.
Yeah.
Creating those case studies too.
Right.
Sometimes people don't want to do an exact quote, but you can write the case study and they can sign off on it. That kind of stuff is always really powerful.
Yep. Yep.
So then when you're looking at both of those studies together, a lot of content, a lot of information you guys are providing your subscribers. What are marketers doing? How are buyers behaving? Where do you kind of see the biggest alignment between what you got from both of those studies?
Uh, on the alignment side, I would say, like what I was saying before, thought leadership, content creation, hitting them on digital channels on trusted industry websites is exactly how to reach these folks. If you wanted to say misalignment, I would say that we did ask a question about what piece of their overall marketing budget goes to each function. So trade shows, lead gen tactics, etc. And it's not a massive misalignment, but it was a little surprising to me that trade shows were still number one, 30%. I think lead gen tactics were 25% number two, but it did come down, trade show
Mhm.
investment. Nothing against trade shows, by the way, but it just makes sense because the people that come to trade shows, they're mid funnel, they're interested. And that means they probably already have a few vendors in mind. So what I've heard from a lot of marketers this year is they're cutting back on trade shows. Not the main ones that have always done well for them, but like the ancillary ones that were like, because they're not getting the leads that they used to get. And that's because I think a lot of these younger buyers, they already have their mindset on specific vendors, and it's harder to penetrate then. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the next time we do this study, if that flips a bit.
I'm curious of your perspective on that. So, one of the biggest misalignments I think about trade show strategy is people just think about what they do at the show, and they miss so much of the pre and the post of their strategy with trade show. Because if, yes, your booth could be pretty and you might get some people to come to your booth that didn't know about you, obviously through your research, not as many people are going to be doing that. But you should already have let your booth guide the people that you have meetings with to your booth so they can see you. You should be scheduling those meetings and making those contacts ahead of show. And so I think people forget that more than they should. And that's one of the biggest errors. And I think intentionally, I can see why the number of shows will be coming down, and more intentional, because then you have more time to do the proper pre, at, and post. If you're
Right.
going to 8 shows over a span of 12 weeks and it's 2 people that are your trade show team, how are you doing that successfully? Do you
Right.
think that that's part of the misalignment?
Yeah, I think I I think it's obviously very important to be doing that, but I think the
Mhm.
biggest misalignment is expecting to find a lot of people in need of discovering vendors when they're attending these events. I mean, yeah, it's 100% important, I think, to do as much as you can with the time frame that you have, because you got to figure, if you're looking to influence an audience, trade shows are probably not the place to do it, because a trade show will go 2 or 3 days and then it's over. You need to be in a consistent place all year long with that message so that it resonates with these buyers. Like I said, even before there's intent, because they do remember it. As long as they're seeing the content that they need to feel good about their decision, they'll remember it and they'll move forward with you when the time comes. But yeah, I do think that I won't say the name, but I do think that it's important to do whatever you can to make a show successful. There was an event that took place earlier this year. No one's on the trade show floor. Everybody is out in the sessions. And there were the smart exhibitors were saying, yeah, we set up a whole bunch of meetings ahead of time. All of our customers are here. We got the sales team here. They're whining and dining them. But we get nothing from the show floor. And then the people who didn't know that were like, the show's terrible. We're not getting anything at the booth. So if you don't do your preparation, yeah, it's going to be a bomb for you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why TMSA stopped doing a trade show floor, is because education and networking is such a huge part of Elevate.
Yep.
And I mean, so this was a bit, when I came in, I was a vendor before, and I said, yeah, my friends visited my booth, but I already know them. I can sell to them anytime I want. If I'm investing in booth and standing at the booth and seeing that I'm missing the organic conversations in the hallway, that's a problem. So we restructured how we do the whole show to create more opportunities for our partner members, our sponsors to have those one-on-one engagements or to be leading those conversations so that they can have more thought leadership opportunity, not take away, because we have sometimes people will come in and try to schedule all these meetings with people while they're in the education sessions, and our attendees don't like that. They're like, no, we don't want to talk to you then. So building more intentional meeting time, things like that. And I think as an event planner, you have to think through those things. Like, what are people coming to your conference for? How do you get the most value for everybody? And then when I saw how much a trade show floor costs on the event side, I was like, no, thank you. But there's ways to do that to kind of meet all those markers. And then to the other, when you're talking about consistency, I would say, like, if you are investing in trade show booths, make sure that the messaging and your booth matches what you're putting out digitally. I know it seems simple, but I've seen that a lot. And you're like, I would have not known that this was your booth because I see something else in your brand all of the time. So making sure you align your strategies so all of those pieces kind of fit together.
Yep. I think TMSA is lucky to have a millennial guiding it.
Well, thank you. I do my best.
If it was me, they'd be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of thinking through what's coming next and how are we doing that, and listening. Like, that's, to me, when people are like, oh, so I was never a leader before I took over TMSA, so I'm still learning my leadership style, if you will. But I think the number one thing we can do is listen and not talk. And so, I feel like I've talked a lot on this podcast, but I like to have a collaboration with that, and like then brainstorming together and I've told them, if I ever say, oh, like, no, this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way we're doing it today, like, just show me the door, because that's not what's going to get you to the next level. Of course, there's tried or true things that are always going to work, and you should not just get rid of them right away, but really think through how to do it better. And being more intentional, I think, is really, like, and I think that that's what your study shows. Like, people are still investing in trade shows. It's still important. I would be curious too, like you were talking about the dinners and wining and dining, like that's such a bigger piece now. Like, I think people would be like, which as an event planner, of course, I hate, because I'm like, you're spending money outside of the show, not at the show. But I understand why that's beneficial to the people. They're like, hey, we get more benefit to sitting in a room, having those dinners or whatever, than exhibiting. So, of course, like I said, another reason why we don't do booths anymore, because if that's not a value for you, that's not going to be a value for us.
Yeah, you think about it like TMSA's event. It's a 2-day event. You always have some kind of networking thing. You advance the relationship by just breaking down the walls and not letting anybody feel uncomfortable in any certain situation. It's the same thing. You take people to dinner, you don't really talk about business. You just want to get to know them on a personal level, so they value you and trust your opinions.
Absolutely. I think that that thought leadership piece, going back to like the beginning of this conversation, is so important. And like
Hmm.
you don't have to sell to people for them to understand the value you bring and how you could help them. Developing those relationships and letting that happen naturally will get you so much farther than
Yep.
doing the hard sell every time.
Yep. No one likes the hard sell anymore,
Nope.
especially younger buyers. They don't want to hear it.
They don't. They don't. That's like when I have new partners coming in, I'm like, do not try to hard sell them. Please do not become a member. Go into the member portal, copy and paste every email and send a mass email. Like, first of all, we're sales marketing people. We know all those tricks and we hate
Yeah.
them. So
Right.
like don't do it. But yeah, like they don't. It becomes inauthentic and they want to work with real people. And so
Right.
getting to know them on that level is going to go farther
Right.
any day.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about different trends, where things are going, how to do it. If a marketing team is listening, hopefully they are, and they wanted to press or test their own strategies against the trends and what you're seeing, what's the one place that you would tell them to start to get going?
Yeah, I would say ask themselves, where are they investing to hit buyers when they're forming their opinion? If you can answer that question and you have consistency in that place, then you're doing a good job. If you can't answer that question, you got to really think about it, because you might have a nice marketing budget, but if you're not utilizing it in the right places, again, I think you're going to be missing opportunities.
I agree. And I think too often people think they need to be everywhere, and you
Yeah.
don't need to be everywhere,
Yep.
especially because marketing, like we said, small budget, small teams, you got to be in the places that your buyers are and then show up hard in those places. And so if you don't
Yep.
know where those places are, definitely missing that opportunity.
Yep. With the right content. Exactly.
Mhm. Yep. Cool. Well, here's the last question I ask everybody who comes on the show. If you could go back in time and advise your younger self anything, personally or professionally, when would you go back to and what would you say?
Uh, I would, I don't know, go back to either my 20s or 30s. And honestly, I'd say this to anybody who's in their 20s and 30s and ask me. I would say if you have the opportunity to take a chance to improve your career, take the chance, because the worst case scenario is you learn something. You learn more from failure than success. But you don't want to be older and have regrets about not taking that chance.
I think that's great advice. So I think people should go check out your studies, learn. They should come to TMSA. This year's Elevate is June 7th through 9th in Denver. Educate yourself, network, get to know people. It will help you grow and succeed. Like we said at the beginning, this industry, these communities, you meet people that you take with you for years and years and years. And having that ability, I think really, takes you into that next step and helps you improve all the time. So I
Yeah.
think that's great
And if
advice.
anybody watching is interested in getting either of these reports, DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email, and I'll make sure you get it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We will put your the link to the studies and stuff in the show notes. So if people want to go check out where to find or get
Okay.
more information about it, that is great. We can put your LinkedIn there so they know how to contact you. We appreciate all the support you give TMSA and for coming on the show today. It's always great to talk marketing. And I love talking about like the studies and the trends and what's coming next because it helps us all realize if what we're doing is heading in the right direction. And that's all we could ask for. So
Yep. Yep.
thank you so much for your time. Catch you guys next week.
All righty. Take care.